Welcome back to Behind the Dance, starting a whole new season. We are in a pandemic, so we're social distancing as we're doing this interview. I got my boy, my brother, Ark from 808 Breakers and Floor Gangz. Wanted to dig deeper on his story. He's definitely a leader in this community. I see him as that. I know a lot of people do see him as that. So welcome, Jeff. Thank you for being a part of this project for me.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
How have you been during this pandemic?
You want the short answer? Or you want the long answer? I've been good. I think keeping up with the news, no matter what that looks like, has helped me have perspective on my own path during the last 10 months or so. And I've been striving. I've been continuing to do what I do and finding new ways to serve my students, the community here, as well as honestly finding new ways to serve myself and keep myself emotionally and physically healthy, because I think
super important
for all of us right now, that's of dire importance. How we're all being tested on not just how well we can treat each other and take care of each other during these challenging times, but also how well we can take care of ourselves and get through, because this pandemic is not going to last forever. And the people that we are going to be on the other side of this, it's going to be important, to develop that person right now. Yeah.
Pre-pandemic, I know you were teaching and training a lot, like every day. How have you been able to maintain a similar lifestyle?
It's definitely been a huge challenge to maintain some semblance of, I guess, like normalcy, again, like anybody else. So prior to the pandemic, I was pushing it 7 days a week as far as teaching classes, creating choreography, creating content online through Patreon, honing in my skills, not just as a teacher, but also as an artist, as my own individual artist, as a b-boy, and also promoting, organizing events, assisting with events, judging, and providing some level of, I guess, like oversight for friends and close ones who are also helming dance programs and things like that. And since the pandemic, the scope of work has shifted a lot more towards documentation and reflection. And by that, I mean a large amount of my focus has gone towards, how well can I catalog, timestamp, and almost like time capsule what I'm doing and what I've done. I've been sitting on a tremendous amount of videos and honestly just like notes in the last 5 years of being a dance teacher and youth mentor and educator and event planner. I've maintained notes of nearly every lesson that I've taught, and I've had like corollary videos with those things, and just trying to package all of that and repackage all of that to give to not just future instructors, mentors, teachers, and b-boys, but to give to my students themselves who may find themselves in the position to be a teacher, and give them a platform of support, really, for those endeavors is really like my biggest priority right now.
That's what's up.
And a lot of that's tied to be honest, my determination to move on and to be moving out of the Bay Area and transitioning from a career that's primarily focused on dance and being an artist and a independent contracted entity to finding new work in Hawaii, and of course still working as a dancer and probably still to some scale like teaching dance, but allowing that to take a backseat in my life.
Nice.
I want to kind of like exit and bow out gracefully, I suppose, and in the process like be able to leave something behind, not for the sake of legacy, because I think that's a played concept, but for the sake of really giving others what I didn't have.
Coming in as a teacher.
Yeah, like and most dancers that don't come from a formal studio-based education, whether it's like collegiate or even like, you know, ballet, modern, things like that, like usually for b-boys and b-girls or, you know, poppers, street dancers, like we're thrown into these studio settings like fish out of water, you know, because for most of us, the environment and context in which we learned and developed our skills is incongruent to what's demanded of us to share, you know, like it's a different setting, you know. And I know that Power Surge, you know, can go on for like hours and days and in beautiful ways in how he articulates how pedagogies are different and how they are, they're significant because they show culture and story and context of like what the art itself is, and therefore what the people who have created the art or established a foundation of those norms have experienced. Like those are like pedagogy is like its own really deep thing. But anyway, yeah, like you know, my through the pandemic, a lot of how I guess I've kept busy has been focused on how I'm cataloging everything that I've done and how I interpret what I've done myself so that I can give it away for free.
Nice.
Like that's really important to me. Like,
nice.
I want to be able to provide that to whomever is interested in it.
Have you had anybody like inquire about that?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, through the years, even pre-pandemic, that has always kind of been a thing, I guess, like behind closed doors, that I've addressed as far as like even like DMs and friends who, like people that I've connected with on my journey, just reaching out and being like, hey, like I have this opportunity to teach in this studio, like could you lend me some tips? Or, you know, even to the degree of me reaching out within the Bay Area community, like when I have to travel and things like that, to get substitute teachers, like for me to like just like throw a line to people, you know, like as far as just like advice on how to build it and establish a curriculum, how to communicate, how to just function as an educator and have the understanding that you are a mentor and role model to some extent, regardless of whether you see these kids for 1 hour a week to 10 hours a week. That like that's something that you have to understand as a dancer, being seen as a teacher. So yeah, like through all of these conversations in the last 3 to 5 years, I realized like it is important, because like if people are reaching out to ask me for help and advice, and you know, it's surely humbling and flattering to even be asked for advice, because none of this was ever my intention. Like I never intended on being a full-time dancer.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I might as well put that out there.
Like you're originally from Hawaii, so what brought you to the Bay?
A lot of things brought me to the Bay.
And when did you come to the Bay from Hawaii?
Okay, so objectively, I have family here in the Bay. I've visited San Francisco for like a long time, since I was a kid, but I started coming out here in 2012 primarily as a dancer, really, you know, from a very scant 3 years of experience as a b-boy in Hawaii, like looking to just sharpen my skills and reach out to a, you know, relative to Hawaii, a relatively close community of breaking that was thriving at the time. And I mean, I think it's still thriving today, you know, like dance in general, not just b-boying and breaking and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was thriving then, like to a high level. That was when like a lot of members, I think of, you know, like the Legacy Crews, like Rock Force, Headhunters, and Renegades and all this stuff. They were still like really active here in the Bay. So yeah, I finished college in 2012 with a bachelor's in kinesiology and rehab science. I came out to the Bay immediately after that for several reasons. I applied for a Doctor of Physical Therapy program that I got waitlisted for. It's at Samuel Merritt University in Oakland. You know, I had grown up and even went through college in Hawaii my whole life, so I was looking for a change of pace and a change of environment that was also still to some degree familiar, so I wasn't completely taken out of my zone. So I came out here, I started working at a printer, ink, and toner business as an account executive and salesperson.
Dude, I remember that.
In the financial district.
When you would like roll up to the acro practices in your uniform.
In business casual, yes. That was, that was part of a romantic dream. I think of, buttoning up and being a professional and breaking on the side. It's every second and third generation Asian's dream who also like dances on the side, like,
Right.
oh, that was it. That definitely didn't work out. I also like had a relationship at the time that was like getting really serious, and there were just a lot of factors that lined up, for me to move to the Bay. And people, I think dance community in the Bay is like really special. And as I've traveled through the years, like I've been able to frame that a little bit more as just like, wow, yes, there is a high degree of competition that's always existed, I think, in the Bay Area, whether you're a b-boy or a crumper or a turfer, this and that. There still is kind of like this network and camaraderie, and I think overarching respect for just people pursuing their craft. And maybe again, that goes beyond dance and just like to the art culture that exists in the Bay Area. And that was a big draw to me, was that, not only is there a healthy amount of competition in breaking my discipline, but there's also a lot of support, and there's a lot of ability to connect with people. Like, I know this guy that is in this city in the Bay, like, oh, reach out to this guy. Like, there's a practice spot going over here. And, at that time, social media was really blossoming as a thing, right? Between 2008 and 2013. So it was almost like a book that just opened up to me. And it was great being able to meet with people from rival crews, practice in different places, from gymnastic studios to hallways in Berkeley, and these clandestine rec centers that are like only our crew and our boys are allowed. Things that I guess as a 31-year-old now I'm like, oh my God, like I kind of roll my eyes at, but I also can understand the necessity to like guard art.
Yeah.
And it felt like a really big privilege to be invited into this culture and community of dance out here. So like that was really big, and that's how I got here.
That was like a thing, especially like for me coming up as a early on b-boy, was like there were no such thing as like open practice spots. Like every crew had their own spot. Like for me in Cloud9, our spot was like the 24 near us. And even like when Edwin was like starting to work at Acro and like, open practice spots were a thing. Like, I mean, we did like the Hayward spot, like back in the day, like the Cal State Hayward spot. But it was like, for me, it was just always uncomfortable to like practice or try something new in front of like people that weren't your crew,
Yeah.
I think that was like a big thing as far as like having a practice spot and like exclusivity.
I think that's, so yeah, like on the other side of that, I guess seesaw or fulcrum is that like, that's why places like South Space and City Dance were so beautiful. And even like Del Rey, I guess kind of like to some degree, was that like, because there's like exclusivity in practice and development in art on like that's totally existing, that these public practice spots ended up feeling a lot like weekly jams.
Yeah, that's
ciphers.
right.
Like so like I mean you've seen it, and many people even like passing by or passing through the city, going through South Space, like have felt it and seen it. It's like, oh dang, there's Iron Monkey getting called out by Gideon, like by some
But
kid.
it was like a jam
like,
without
wow,
the competition. It was like the the more
it was
authentic
a jam.
version.
It's like a jam. And then to some degree, like there were like live DJs who would show up, and this and that. It was the whole ambiance, I think, that created it, and it was like a good balanced like ecosystem for dancers to metabolize talent in. And it was like, I think that is an ideal thing to try to recreate, though it was organic. But I think for anyone who is interested in providing some kind of service or outlet or space to their dance community, it's like, how do you create an ecosystem. It's like looking at like a bigger picture of like the ecosystem. So like if your scene has a lot of exclusive practices, like provide a public space that feels like a jam, or vice versa, you know, like, because it's also important to like create exclusive practice spots too. If everything in your city is just like, you know, there's like the same 40 people here like 4 days a week, you know, like it can be cool to form these little bubbles of like 3 to 5 people where you really get intimate on an artistic level of like examination and reflection in your skill. So yeah, like the Bay Area had that, and I think that gave me like it almost like a subconscious framework to prepare myself as a teacher and mentor, instructor, whatever I do. I don't know. Like,
Good.
and like to create opportunity for kids.
Yeah.
To be like here now where I stand at my studio again pre-pandemic, to be like offering not just classes but like open practice spots for my kids and people passing through the towns. Like we had Torb the Roach actually come out here in session with us.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Like and then also provide jams and competitions that bring people in, and also provide workshops that engage artists from the outside to have a foot in the door that is a little more formal. Like that's not a bad thing, like to provide those outlets and just like provide a healthy like offering of different experiences for dancers young and old in a place. I think that diversity is what helps to, again, I like the word metabolize because that's the way that I see it. Like,
yeah.
It allows people to test themselves, be humbled, to feel like champions and grow in the process.
So a lot of the things that you've kind of like accomplished during your time here in the Bay has been super organic in the sense of like there was no real like I'm going to be like a mentor, teacher.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's tight. And now that you've had this, what is it, like a 9-year run of teaching?
Yeah.
And man, you created an army of kids, which I always see as something really dope because each one of them has like their own individuality. They don't look like each other, but they have that crew connection. That's something you can't teach. So how did you manage to kind of like, I guess like give an example of that and kind of guide them to where they are now as their own person, their own crew?
Yeah, so as far as being a crew, man, they just watch me and my crew just act like dumbasses all the time, bro. Like, that's about it. No, I mean, modeling. No, but actually, yes. So I feel like that is actually kind of a big can of worms, and it's one that I've had to bring up to this like pocket of kids that is a crew over the last 4 years, because I guess starting from even like my concept of a crew and the way that I teach it, it's like I know my journey, I know my experience, and I know now with perspective how unique 808 Breakers is. Of course, being me, knowing my own truth, my own story, as well as my brother's, and also being able to see that, you know, like the concept of what a crew is can be different. I've also been around and have seen crews that operate more like sports teams.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember at a time like feeling polar about it, but like now realizing like that piece to that, like that can exist, that because that can also serve as a function for artists in that crew to like really cut their teeth, because it is a little more cutthroat within that crew. It's more like, oh, you're A team, I'm B team, like, oh, you're entering freestyle session. And so anyway, like having an understanding of like, again, like the diversity that exists in the understanding of what a crew is, and walking into the challenge as a teacher, and really that comes from curiosity from 5 years back, being like, what would it be like to create a crew of kids, or how can I offer a crew experience without being too heavy-handed and
like a formality type
yeah
thing.
And without being too inorganic. But I still have to be organized.
Yeah.
I mean, I still am a teacher. Like, I can't just like throw these kids to the wolves. I can't just be like, well, some of you guys are gonna come out of this jam with bruises, and some of you aren't. Some of you guys are gonna be friends. So I guess allowing my own experience to be the framework, but also detaching myself from the expectation that these kids have to be in any shape or form the type of organic brotherhood and sisterhood of a crew that I have, because I know how unique that is.
Yeah.
But looking at the journeys, the challenges and struggles that my crew had faced. So for example, in the 808 Breakers, early on in our journey, we were sponsored and we were like on TV and doing local music videos and things that we were totally not prepared for. Like we were newbies. I mean, I've like covered that story before and I could go into it, but yeah, I remember always feeling really unprepared and some type of imposter because I was like new to this named crew, the 808 Breakers, and getting thrown these opportunities. And here in Hawaii, you know, there's like ABC and there's like a Rocksteady chapter and Red Eye Jedi and all these badasses that we look up to, and they're not anywhere in sight. But we were performing, you know, with and for like Dare and doing like seminar performances where we speak out against like drugs and talk about living healthy lifestyles and can show off our skills on music videos, and that like our relationships within the crew developed and depreciated and just evolved through just having a common goal to work at. And I think providing an organized way of throwing and preparing the kids for those challenges themselves, like allowed them to become their own crew and form and evolve their own relationships. So, you know, a big part of their journey has not just been going to jams and practicing and even like performing on stages for their studio, but also performing for their own communities, whether it's here in Marin or it's out in Oakland for Oktoberfest. Those are incredible opportunities, you know, and like allowing them to wrap their minds and struggle with, you know, like how do we perform in different settings?
Yeah,
like
I remember seeing
it's very different performing like in a town square.
Yeah. Like you used to post like
stage.
the times that they would host their own street shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that was amazing.
Giving them that, like, okay, well, guys, we're gonna do a street show. Like, so one of you guys is gonna have to speak. Somebody's gonna have to talk. Like,
but I mean, like you showed them how to start it, and then even then, like they would like have their own street shows, like without you like guiding it.
Yeah.
Which was dope.
And at one point, you know, they threw their own small local jam that engaged their peers and also engaged, like I think Apollo was a judge and Profil was a judge. It engaged some of the dancers that exist in the Bay Area that they looked up to, giving them a wealth of opportunities and challenges. Not opportunities in the sense of like, here it is for you, but also the understanding like, yo, you gotta like work to make this happen too. So like bringing them to jams, having them perform at jams, having them perform in community settings, having them perform in theaters, having them speak, having them teach.
Yeah, and then
you know?
I remember you having them do like their own mini jam within jams.
Yeah,
like
the youth breaking circuit. Yeah, like kind of
tight.
doing little jam takeovers where the kids themselves are emceeing and DJing a segment, like a segmented hour where it's all youth battles, and they're also judging too, so they get to have the experience of being on a seat. And as kids, how, you know, working towards that goal, how that influences their camaraderie and relationships on and off the floor, like that is, you know, what builds a crew dynamic. And then also like after all of our many trips going abroad where we rent out Airbnbs, for example, going to Massive Monkeys Day twice, we rent out like a big Airbnb, we all stay together, we have chaperones, we cook together, we sightsee together, we do all these things in the periphery that, you know, I feel like every b-boy and b-girl who's not brought up in a studio understands, like that is very much a part of the struggle as much as being called out in a cypher or battling in the parking lot or battling in the jam. Like as much as that is, like all of these other things are part of being a crew, like making sure your homie shows up to the airport on time, like, or like spotting somebody on toothpaste, you know, like little things, like whatever, you know, like spotting somebody on money for his food because like maybe they didn't bring enough cash, like that. Those are part of the experiences that I guess subconsciously form our idea of relationships and community within this dance. And more than that, you know, like whether or not these kids continue to break for the rest of their lives, it's like those are healthy memories to wet your teeth on. as an adult, you know? And it's just beautiful that we can do that within breaking. So as far as, like, I guess test tube experimenting and creating a crew of little kids, that was a big part of it. It wasn't just me being like, well, this is an idea of a crew, like going in with a predetermined notion, but being like, well, these are some of the journeys that I've been through. How can I provide a safe and guided experience for these kids to see those things? And then also like being like, maybe these kids won't be a crew. Like honestly, like, I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's like, you know, maybe, and this is like kind of common because like there's a mortality, I guess, to everything, and it doesn't have to be a negative thing. That like, yeah, maybe it'll just be 3 out of 10 of these kids that are very tight, but I know that all 10 of them will all have some perspective on those experiences, and that's like what's valuable, that journey. And so maybe 3 end up being a core group that like continues to like battle and break and create practice spots, and that's like, wow, that's incredible. But for the other 7, you know, like it's still a job well done. It's still a beautiful moment in time, and there's nothing wrong with like moving forward in life to other things. Yeah, with these experiences. It only builds you more. And maybe that is what a crew is too, that falling apartness.
Yeah. Let's dig into that, because then like this has to come from somewhere as far as like your own experiences in order for you to be able to teach that. Who created 808 Breakers and like kind of guided you to your path in breaking as far as like you and 808?
That's a good question. That's a really good angle to the question.
Because these kids had you as a mentor. So what or who guided you through your breaking?
Like, dang, dude, I remember meeting Noi at Mighty this one time, and he like showed me the. Okay, so I guess to put it as concisely as possible, 808 Breakers started before I was ever in it. I'm consider myself like 3rd generation.
Okay.
808 Breakers started in 2005, and this is all from what was told to me by the person who put me in, Solid, B-Boy Solid from Hawaii. 808 Breakers started in 2005, helmed by a guy named Justice from LA Breakers, who later founded House of Reps in Vegas. And the name of the crew was brought up supposedly by a guy named Loretto, who I think was his cousin or just close to him. He was like, oh, you're in LA Breakers, but you're in Hawaii now, you're stationed here for the military. You're in 808, we're 808 Breakers. It was a super crew to some degree. Mario, amazing. There were a lot of different members in the 808 Breakers at that time. They did really well in competitions, and like most crews, they all went their separate ways due to adult lives and paths departing, and they left the crew in the hands of a guy who was somewhat of a big brother to me and put me in the 808 Breakers. His name was B-Boy Solid, and he was a really charismatic, he is a very charismatic guy in the 808 Breakers, or history, and like in Hawaii scene. He was a talker.
Everybody in 808 is charismatic. They all have some type of character.
Yeah, and I think, you know, yeah, like-minded people seek like-minded people, and he saw in myself and my peers, because we were all very new, like the people that he put down into 808 Breakers in my generation, we had been breaking for like a year, 2 years tops. And we had all met independently through MySpace and Zanga breaking call-outs.
Oh, shit.
You know, to keep the story short, but it's really beautiful. Like we, as high school students, like we called each other out, and they were like the town B-boys and the Kaneohe B-boys. We met at a rec center. We all like battled for 3 hours and went to a Jack in the Box, crammed in like a 5-seater, like 9 of us. And then, yeah, serendipitously, we all went to the same practice spots. We all knew B-Boy Solid. He saw that we already had chemistry, and he was like, all right, let's do this. I have gigs from my connections.
So
that was where the
began.
sponsorships came. He was like, he was already working on a local circuit, Hawaii show called Dis and Dat, was like kind of sketch comedy and news. And so he got us on there. We were sponsored like off the rip by 88 Tees, linked up with Dare Day. And it was crazy. It was just like so much work, like holy smokes. And then of course, like we're struggling to make it past prelims at local jams. Like this is kind of weird. Like, all right, so our shows had a lot of windmills and CCs. But it was a beautiful journey of being thrown head first into opportunity and challenge. And I guess maybe that's the genesis. That's what started my career and my identity, I guess, as who I am today. So yeah, B-Boy Solid got me in about 2008 in the crew. And as far as mentors, I think we all can agree in this dance and in all things, it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
It does take a village. So B-Boy Solid was like a big brother to me in a breaking sense. He exposed us to all these opportunities, and he also, me specifically, pushed me very quickly into the role of being the organizer of the crew and having to handle booking and organization and emailing correspondence. We incorporated our crew in 2008 as an LLC. So we created a business account and had a bank account for all of our performance money to go into a central place. And I had to catalog all of this. Again, I'm still like a newbie and I'm still like a kid just out of high school.
So you're like 18 still?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, also like when somebody would be late, he'd just throw me a microphone at a high school assembly or elementary school assembly with like 100 people in front of me. It's like, here, keep them busy. Talk about breaking. Oh my God, like, hey guys, that are like trying to have energy, like, don't smoke cigarettes. And I never had even tried smoking cigarettes. So like, I now know in perspective, like there's a difference between a person telling someone not to do drugs and they've like, for fear or for whatever reason, like have never like had any experience in that place, versus someone who's had experience and like has wisdom on it, being like, you know, like this is not the way. And so I'm like just this kid like running around, just being able to present first and build wisdom and knowledge later. And so that was really instrumental, and I'm actually grateful for it.
That's tight.
I'm grateful for those experiences. And in Hawaii, our big brothers were always Red Eye Jedi crew, J-Live, Kazuya, to some degree, yeah, like even like J-Soul, Gil, all these heads in Hawaii, the community was there for us to just go up against. And I think as far as like person-to-person mentorship, Profil One was probably one of the first people that we connected with, because I was already traveling to the Bay here and there through college, and he was at Lawton Rec Center and South Space. He was one of the first people that I linked up with, and we flew him out to Hawaii. He put us under his wing because he saw us traveling, and I know that he'd agree, like he saw some shape of himself in us, even though we were just goofy and like we weren't on a artistry technique tip, we were not equipped for any of the things that we were putting ourselves up against. Because in Hawaii, we didn't, as far as like our dance and understanding like what is the foundation of breaking as far as both movement and understanding of the context of movement and all of that and how things should be composed together, like we had none of that. We never had any of that. And Profil and Milestone from Renegade Rockers were really instrumental in that for me. And in modeling what that looks like and feels like to me. When I was younger in Hawaii, I had a lot of influences, even like Lucid, from Soul Cannibals, Soul Shifters, and like K-Mel lived with our homie in Hawaii for like a year and a half, and I know that like that had a huge effect on my understanding of what breaking is and like how to act. And you know, things that I don't really even agree with now in perspective, but I know that I had to go through to grasp an understanding of like my personal moral values of how to be confident and how to hold yourself up in this dance without needing to put a front and be arrogant or be overly abrasive in this dance. And of course, like yourself, you know, coming out to the Bay Area, like I would honestly say the Bay Area scene was a mentor to me. Like meeting yourself and AJ Mad and just being around you guys simply was instrumental in shaping how I perceived this dance and how I perceived like being an individual, being a character, being, and also being solid as a person while you're performing as a b-boy.
So like tying back to that, like for me when we connected at Acro, that was like a time where My crew kind of wasn't like active in the competitive scene, but like active in training. But like when we met at Acro, I was definitely looking for like other people to get down with that were hungry, and like getting down with you and Jack at the practice spot. For whatever reason, like we just like clicked, and it was crazy. And I was like, these guys are hella tight. But if it was like me younger, I probably wouldn't have like even stepped in the circle with you guys. I'd be like, nah, do your thing. But like it was dope, and like even the first Alpha Fame we did in Union City. Like I was technically supposed to end it with Black and Reese, but they weren't able to make it, and so I remember asking you last minute, and you were sick that day.
I had a fever.
Yeah, and like
it's so crazy now that I'm thinking, like, given the pandemic now. I'm sorry, not to derail you, but just being like, dang, I've gone to so many jams like sick. And feverish, like home.
But you didn't show no sickness, and the only time you even showed sickness was like when we weren't dancing. You're like in the battle, like in the circle, you're like, yeah, like goofy and like your own normal self. After the battle, you're like, dying.
Like trying to breathe and like laying down and stuff, like, yeah.
But yeah, like the connection we had like was like instant. Like it was almost like we had like known each other for like a long time, which was dope. And like that's tied to know like where it's rooted from, as far as like you and your upbringing as a b-boy, like believing the whole arrogance thing. Like I felt like I wish I could have learned that earlier. I think I came into it like accepting the fact that that was like how I needed to be as a b-boy. But then I mean like grew out of it eventually. But there's like still a part of me that like I look back on now where it's like I'm not that arrogant type, but I don't sugarcoat stuff when people ask me for stuff, or like I don't even know why people ask for my feedback. When people ask for feedback, it's like, you want the truth or the soft truth? Because I don't like now it's like I'm a little bit more hesitant because I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings or anything like that. But yeah, like I wish I did learn the non-arrogance early on.
Yeah.
Like that part, like especially now looking at how like the scene is like not the b-boy scene specifically, but just dance community in general, there's just a lot of like negative energy that's happening.
I think, you know, to that point, a lot of the concept of like mentorship goes so far beyond just being in a room and like having a conversation. Those things are important, but having a conversation with the person, it goes into modeling, you know, like sometimes you're not ready for the conversation, but if you're around the people and you look up to them and you just see how they act, you're like, okay, I'm gonna shut up right now. Like I'm just gonna be dope. Yeah. If I gotta be dope. And if I'm not about like fighting somebody, I'm not gonna act like I am.
Yeah.
Like,
speaking of like people you look up to, who were some of your first like inspirations in like breaking?
Starting in Hawaii, my biggest inspirations were Skilroy, this guy named Boogie D, I think he gets down with Battleborn. He lives in Vegas.
Oh, sick.
He was Red Eye Jedi. So those two were really, really inspirational to me, as well as J Live, he's now in Floor Gangz. LT Boogie, who founded Lions of Zion.
And that name sounds familiar. I don't think I ever met him.
He's a really flexible guy. Yeah, he's nuts, bro. Supposedly he's the one who kind of inspired Benji to break the way he did. He's an older guy, but he's been off the radar. He's an off the radar kind of like hermit crab type. But he was a huge influence to me in Hawaii. And I didn't even understand what he was doing when I'd watch him, but I remember seeing how serious he was and how proud of his craft he was. And it was an inward thing and not an outward thing. It was more about like him enjoying the intricacies of his own work, even if no one understood it. Like that was really special for me to just see and be around, even if I couldn't put words to it at that time. Here in the Bay Area, of course, people that I really looked up to immediately was Profo, Milestone from the Renegade Rockers, honestly, Edwin Black Johnson, because, and I mention him particularly, not just because he helped me get a job when I got fired from my full-time hustle as a salesperson for Inc., but because Ed modeled to me what a professional and what like a man in a breaking world should be.
Yeah.
Like a guy who was stand up, like what you were saying, like a guy who's like not afraid to be honest. He's confident, but not aggressive, not cocky, not arrogant, you know. And a guy who knows when to keep to himself and when it's time to like be level with someone and just tell them what's up. And I remember like the few conversations when I was in a dark place going through a divorce like Edwin had with me, that, you know, more than what he said, I felt like his presence was always very reassuring. And I know that like I feel like a lot of the people that I looked up to and feel like I was mentored by modeling for in the Bay Area, I feel like they existed to me way off the floor. Like it had like them being in this light of, oh my God, of mentorship to me had more to do with how they helped me move through life and navigate through life. Not just skills and not just like, you know, okay, this is a fundamental like 2-step and this and that, but on that note, like Seth from Circle of Fire and Soul Shifters, I've always looked at as like an uncle and an absolute inspiration because of the way that he cultivated community and the way that he was beautiful with his words and how the way that Seth spoke to both crowds of people and individuals it just helps people believe in themselves and inspires hope. And when I, again, like, going through those hard times, through a divorce, like I remember also next to Edwin, like Seth really, I remember him taking the time to just visit me and hang out. Yeah. Hang out and like just dance a little at like a beach, just screw around, make little trippy clips near Ocean Beach. Yeah. Because I know that like at Movement, he was doing like this blindfolded battle at that time. And it was just
I
like,
was your guide.
Yeah. Like, so the promo for that, like they shot while I was going through all that. And I know like Seth was aware that I was going through a time, and I'd like to think like, you know, he reached out also as a part of like just giving me something to do and just being around. Like he drove from the East Bay out to the city and like we got coffee and we just chilled. And so anyway, like those moments had a huge impact on me as an artist and as an educator and a mentor and as a B-boy, as a B-man, I guess you call it. Because like here's this guy who has a place in the history of breaking, like as Circle of Fire, like they brought a very special element and energy to this dance that is, you know, undeniable, I think, for that time period of like Lords of the Floor and Battle of the Year. Like here he is, you know, taking his time to just chill with me and like bless me up with just his presence and talk me through just like, you know, like you're gonna get through this in life and you're gonna be stronger. And being like, dang, like from this idea of being a dancer, being an artist, like this wealth of experiences and mentorship and role modeling that like I can develop myself into just a better person, whether I continue to dance or not. Like that was huge to me. So Seth, Edwin, Milestone, Profo out here, yourself, Noi,
dude.
Honestly, Politics from the Renegade Rockers, being around that guy, I've always gotten good vibes from that dude, and that's a guy who I think also has a deep, healthy and positive perspective on what like movement, how beautiful movement and dance is. And he, I think he is also very much like a giver out here. Also like Ajax, you know, very much like Profo also showed me that like, life exists beyond the dance floor. And, you know, like, I think Ajax to me presents like a model of what it's like to be a family man and also like be a kind of a big deal, at least like within his generation of b-boying, you know, and have no gripes or regrets about it. I think it's like helped me form my perspective of just what breaking is to me in my life.
For sure, those are definitely all really dope people to surround yourself with. Yeah. And I was gonna touch on like with Edwin, like like he was, because I've known him since high school, so he was always like somebody I looked up to and like how I felt like I needed to be as a person. And I think I took it to the extreme, like as far as like the confidence goes, and that's probably where I got my arrogance from, was like I felt like because I had him by my side and like he was my extra confidence, it was like I can be this. So like and it's tight because like we talk about this now, and I was gonna bring this up with you, but like my crew, well, Jason and Edwin created a list of my top 10 beefs.
Okay.
Right, and we talked about this, and it was a funny
Top
list.
10 beefs with you
Yeah,
included?
and somebody
Okay.
else.
Okay.
So top 10 beefs that I had, just me.
Okay.
in my breaking career, and like I was like, you guys made a top 10 of like my beefs. They're like, yeah, there's more, but we narrowed it to 10. I was like, there was more. I was like, yeah, you keep tabs on these, and it's crazy because we laughed about it and like talking about it with them. I was like, how did you guys stay by my side through all of this? Like you guys are for sure down for me. Like they're like, yeah, you know, some of the things you said was out of pocket. But you know, you're our boy. We're gonna hold you down. And I was like, damn, that's fucking real brother love right there. Like,
yeah.
And it was tight, like to have those guys by my side, and so like hella appreciate them for all of that. And I was just gonna ask you, like, yo, like, cause yeah, like from what you've described as your breaking career, it sounds like it was super like more about like the fun side of dance. But in your breaking career, did you ever you mentioned a rival, but did you ever have any like breaking beef?
Before I'm gonna answer that, I want to know who was on the top of the list for your beef.
Let's see if I have it here.
Maybe you're top 2. You go first. Oh, are they people here in the Bay?
Oh, most of them are, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I didn't really go. I didn't really travel like in that sense. So my number one, I don't even know if they watch this, but my number one is I don't know if you ever met him.
No.
He's from.
Oh wow.
But it was like super early in my breaking career. Most of my beefs, I'm gonna tell you right now, most of my beefs started because of freestyle session boards.
The Bay Area thread.
Yeah,
100 pages deep.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so, and number 2 would be, number 2 they named.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And
He's is Gates?
oh, he.
Oh wait.
No.
Oh no. Oh okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And what's crazy is like, I don't know how that's a number 2 beef, but for whatever reason, yeah, that's my number 2 beef. And
I can see that being an online thing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you know what's crazy is like I heard recently, I don't know if I'm gonna put this in the video, but I heard recently, because I'm not friends with him on any social networking or anything like that, but word got to me that he posted something on his Instagram stories talking negatively about me and Cloud9, and this was recently, but none of us have ever even spoken to him in any recent times or anything like that. So I was just like,
muted him.
and so
Yeah,
I
he
was
does
like,
that.
I was like, huh? So he's still mad.
I mean, I think there's certain personalities that perhaps for whatever reason, whether it's trauma in the past or this or that, they just use the social media platform at large to vent
Yeah.
and showcase the chips on their shoulder that they carry, and that comes off in different ways.
Yeah.
And now I just kind of feel sorry for people like that, and at the same time, like I also know like it's not my duty to like save people from darkness too either, but it's like, dang, like that's more, I realize now, like, dang, that's like more on them.
Yeah.
Like the shit talking is more of like a reflection of like how they probably feel insecure about themselves, or things that have happened in their past that like they're definitely not talking about actually, but like alluding to or like triggered by. And that
So going
that
back.
sucks. So yeah, so
Your-
my biggest,
your beefs.
so yeah, as far as like beefs and rivalries that have existed in my dance career, I can't pinpoint any like notable ones. I know that in Hawaii, when 808 breakers started traveling more, and I guess we started getting stronger skills, we were battling BRK a lot. And I was battling Josh Skittle a lot. Over the course of like a year and a half, it was like nearly every jam or every other
the same
jam.
island.
Yeah, we're in the same island, and there's not that many other crews either. So, you know, there's that. and they had a lot of members at one point. They had Don Lee from Texas, who I think was part of the early version of Rad.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and you know, he was a big fire for them competitively, and we would clash against those guys a lot battle-wise. And I do remember that being a phase in my career, in hindsight, that I think I did as a dancer cross boundaries that I wouldn't cross today, as far as sidelining and talking loudly and you know, like slapping the ground, and this and that, things that really didn't mean anything and communicated more along the lines of competitive insecurity. I remember, like acting up a lot. We never got into a fist fight with those guys. Like we never were about that life, and we never crossed those lines. Like we were never like pushy or anything like that either. We never like put hands on anybody, but I know that we were definitely annoying, I guess. Like we were definitely very annoying, and dude, I respect BRK and Josh Skittles tremendously for their longevity, and now my personal understanding of what a crew is, like, you know, they provided a home and a collective and a brotherhood for kids in those West Side streets, like literally in Hawaii. And it was like a beautiful, positive place for those kids to be relative to other things they could have turned to. And it's like, I can totally understand, like, where us being kind of like nerdy, annoying kids in those battles, 'cause it's still breaking, you know, like, probably triggered them a lot and activated some heightened triggers for them. And you know, I'm glad it never got to that point. And I look back on those times, and I try to take it as a lesson and a blessing for me to be able to communicate and share those things to younger people, and even like adults who have come to me in confidence about like advice on how to behave and how to act at jams or in battles, and like, why didn't I make it past prelims? I'm like, well, your round didn't have any substance. You were just talking a lot and trying to burn these guys super hard and trying to get them to crash, rather than focusing on making your round dope and amazing on an artistic level. And like, I can actually now say that, having the experience of being like that, you know? So yeah, rivalries, the only one that sticks out is BRK and maybe like Josh Skittle, but that was more on a competitive, like on the floor level.
Mine was beyond the floor. I've had a few times where it got to pushing.
Dang.
Yeah.
Sorry. In the Bay, actually, you bring it up now, like somehow. Being in the Bay, I think our biggest rivalries, hands down, were Brothers of War and Guerrilla Warfare. Definitely. And I think that was just, again, maybe that was just because of the environment. Like they're similarly aged. They're coming up, and we just always ran into them.
In the competitions,
I don't think it ever really seriously went off the floor or anything like that. But it was like a friendly, like, dang, dude, like I don't want to lose. And ESU too, of course, like, dang it, like you're seeing the same 3 crews at every jam at a certain point. You're like, all right, we're battling one of those guys.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy because like like even with all of the beefs that I've had, Jason brought it up to me that to this day, I actually am friends with like majority of the people that are on that list. And you know what's funny is, I don't know if he's on that list, but hold on, let me see if he's on there. He is on the list. So, on the list, right? So we had a beef, and it was crazy is at that time when we were battling at Alpha Fame, right? And we battled him and final. Was that the final? I think that was the final, right? We battled.
I thought we battled. Yeah.
And
no, we battled them separately. The semifinals we battled, and then the buff guy. The finals was Cypher City.
That was the Union City one.
Oh yeah. Okay. The first one, the qualifier. Yes.
And so it was kind of like, it was kind of fading the beef that me and at that time, but it was just interesting to be in that final battle against him and win. And so I mean, like, we were civil, not as close as we are now, but yeah, like we were cool. Because there was a time where we would never really like even pay attention to each other at a jam.
Really?
Yeah, like
I'm kind of surprised because isn't like, you know, part of the group and like
Yeah.
you're tight with like and stuff.
yeah.
Really?
That's a story for another time.
Huh. Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, like for the most part, yeah, like on this list, like I can message these guys and be like, hey, what's up? Like, what have you been up to? Type thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like definitely not. Well, I don't keep in touch with the top two.
Yeah, I think, so speaking on the topic of beef, especially on just a purely competitive on the floor tip, to me, a big milestone in like understanding beef on the floor versus off the floor was being in a situation where my crew and I were at a dinner with a very well-known crew after a jam, and these guys were like being complete
Arrogant asshole.
douchebags to us and like being incredibly condescending and like telling us like we didn't beat them and it was like this or that, and like kind of like demeaning even our skills and stuff. And this is at a dinner where like you would think like even as like athletes, if it were a sports setting, it's like, okay, like we're all just warriors on the same battlefield, and like neither of our crew is in charge of what the judges are thinking and want anyway, right? So it's like, this is the day after, and so like having the experience of being around more reputable dancers than I perceive myself, you know, take to their ego like everything that's happened on the floor, off the floor, was like a big indicator to me that like, okay, like whatever happens on the floor really like I don't want to be like that, and whatever happens on the floor should have no bearing on how I treat another human being in person and outside, and especially because I really don't know these people anyway.
Yeah.
Like even the people that I've battled the most, I don't really know them that well. I don't know what their lives have been through.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And so like I should probably get to know them first if I ever were to judge them.
Yeah.
And it's like I guess being on that polar side of the seat where like I'm being judged for something that's like just breaking, you know, and
I'll feel you on that. Like I mean, like in my coming up time, like I remember like a lot of times like b-boys would always just happen to eat at the same Denny's or something, right? And like it's just interesting, like for me, being observant, I would see that sometimes these b-boys would carry their dance persona with them outside of dance, which is interesting because it's like you can't just be walking around as like an arrogant asshole like everywhere, but the fact that some of these people did, it was just like interesting. I was like, I mean, I have
to sleep like this.
It was just interesting, like, cause like I mean, like even me having an arrogant personality, looking back as a b-boy coming up, I was never that person. At least I don't think I was that person outside of the dance floor. Like I always saw that as like
that's kind of corny too.
Yeah. Like as much as you're supposed to be yourself as a dancer, like as a battle dancer, there's a persona that you carry that's separate from what you carry outside.
Well, I mean, you figure if like the context of the moment is a battle, like literally just the word battle, then it's combative, you know? And I think it's interesting. That's a very deep topic. I think that relates to like other disciplines and industries too, as far as like the masks we wear and like what's real and how like, you know, art is often an imitation of life. Yeah. And how on one hand, you do actually have artists that are purely being themselves on the floor, and they are douchebags off the floor anyway. Like that's interesting. And then it's also beautiful to see still people that are consistently like cool on the floor and off the floor. Yeah. And what's confounding is the people that are cool off the floor and dicks on the floor, or maybe they're like really nice on the floor, but they're like really backhanded, like douchey off the floor. Like that's also kind of weird too.
Kind of like that scene in Forgetting Sarah Marshall when he's like in Hawaii, and the guy that serves him and he hooks him, he's like, hey, here you go. And then he sees him on the beach, and he's just like, he's a complete asshole.
Kicks his ass.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah. And that just kind of calls into the motive that as a human being, we're all on the continuous search for our true identity and to have our outwards identity be in line with our soul. And that's never quite something that is completely solved. And as an artist, especially as a dancer, it's more interesting because you actually see that journey. You see, because your art is a reflection of something deeper.
Yeah.
That like you see whether your work is in line with who you are or not. And sometimes like it bounces back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, just I guess to see. And at the same time, as a person, it can be tough. Yeah. Beef, man.
Dude.
Beef is such an interesting concept in like today's day and age. Like, right? Like, what happens when you're beefing with somebody and you have to see them online?
Yeah. But it's like
I'm gonna see you on Zoom.
and that's also another thing that's interesting because like I mean like from my last few times of being at jams, you know, like I'm always greeting everybody that's there. Like it's like we all know each other. How do these dancers today like separate the sub like crew aspect culture from being friends with other people in other crews? You know, like how do you do that?
I think that's different per person.
Yeah.
It depends on your individual personality, and then again, you got to take into account like different crews have different modes and standards and values, whether spoken on or not. And so that like, you know, maybe certain crews pair together well and certain don't. You know, like some are like water and vinegar. And then that puts a lot of, I think, pressure and sometimes anxiety on the individual who's in both.
Yeah, that was another
I've heard
thing,
from
too.
certain individuals in situations like that. But I've also heard from said individual who's in two really reputable crews that have they're yin and yang. So I know a dude who I've grown very fond of. So I know a dude who is in two crews that are like yin and yang to each other. He's in a crew that is like super diehard brotherhood, dudes who show up at each other's barbecues and
Things
are
outside
just
of
willing
dance.
to catch a beer no matter what, practicing or not, enter whenever it's clever. And then he's also in a crew that has a hierarchy and is kind of like a sports team, has like a A string and a B string, and is incredibly competitive within its structure. And how when both crews are in a jam, the rare times that those crews are at the same place, that it is kind of difficult to navigate those waters and relationships to even just be able to chill. But also how that guy feels like he needs that. Like he personally needs that and enjoys that because he has ambitions within the breaking scene competitively, and that being a part of a hard-ass crew does help him like stay motivated and push himself. And then he also needs this polar kind of brotherhood where nobody cares if you flopped your prelim round and it's like, whatever, bro, like we'll drink after.
Yeah.
And he thrives in that duality. And yeah, those are factors in that element where like not every individual placed in two crews can thrive with two crews, and it also depends what the two crews are.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm in two crews.
Yeah.
I'm in the 808 Breakers and I'm in the Floor Gangz. And I've felt that, you know, there is a perception now of what Floor Gangz is because it's a globalized crew, I suppose. Like we have multiple chapters in Europe and Korea and Japan and China and America. And that there is a perception of it being exactly that, a globalized crew, because it is. And that there is a hierarchy and a pecking order and this and that when it comes to who's entering with whom at what jam. And I mean, I'll put it on record, it's not that it's very loose at best. It's just we're huge, we're just a big network of artists that share a similar outlook and philosophy on breaking and brotherhood in general, and we all vibe to some degree, and we can all be adults with how we communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was very congruent actually with the 808 Breakers. So, you know, being a part of two crews, in
It's
my
similar.
case, they are very similar.
Yeah.
It's not a big issue at all.
Yeah, and I remember in my interview with Provo, he talked about that. Like when he got down with floor gangs, he mentioned it as is it a Korean term?
Jung.
Yeah.
Brother. You know?
And that's tight.
I felt like that was when he was breaking that all down to myself and Hijack, before the notion of even being in floor gangs was out there. It was like, yeah, oh yeah, that's just like us. Sick.
Yeah.
We're like still in the same crew.
Yeah,
And we're still in the same crew with
basically,
each
yeah.
other, and we're still in the same crew with our mentor who lived 2 doors away from us.
Dude, and I even
Not much has changed.
I witnessed that too. I forget what jam
Is
it
that
was.
All the way live? with
No,
three
it
of
was
us?
it was after a Sacramento jam, I believe, and I went to go eat with you, Jack, Ajax, Profo, and I forget who else. But yeah, I went to go eat with you guys afterwards, and it was just like me, like you guys were talking about like future plans. It was weird, like because I wasn't like I was practicing, but not like training to do anything, but being in that environment of like how you guys were organizing stuff and even talking about things outside of dance, I was like, how do I get down? I was like, I'm already down with like Jeff and Jack. I'm cool with Profo, I'm cool with Ajax, but then I was just like, I'll just be cool with them.
Yeah. And like,
But it was just dope to like be observant and see that it was more than just a breaking crew.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I am very well aware also that at a time, floor gangs in the USA and in the Bay Area felt like it was trying to, or I think there was a perception that floor gangs was trying to recruit members who were just like competitively doing well.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, I guess I can
think-
see how that is because when they recruited you and Jack, like you guys were on like this crazy come up, like your names were
and
definitely.
Kobe too.
Huh?
And Kobe.
Yeah, you guys' names was coming up, like you guys were making a lot of noise in your respective areas and
Yeah.
and
like we were serious about the dance. Like,
Yeah.
we loved it, and we were serious about our development and pushing it. But also, of course, all these things behind the scenes that no one will ever see. It's just like, dang, we were just kicking it a lot.
Yeah.
And again, going back, like to just going through a divorce and just kind of feeling lost at a period of my life.
Yeah, I
The
remember
members
that.
in floor gangs were there. Like I would drive up to Sacramento and hang out with Sam from Underground Flow and Floor Gangs, and these dudes were just always down to kick it.
Yeah.
Like, and it wouldn't even have to be practicing.
Yeah.
It was like, you coming over? You want to come up and just drink and have a barbecue? We have some food. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
That is huge to me. So
now
yeah,
with like where we are in this time frame and competitive battling isn't like active, what's next for you in your dance life?
yeah. That's
Obviously,
that's the big question for all b-boys going through this right now. Like, how are you driven? Right? Is that what you're asking? Like,
I mean, no, I think like what is next for you? Like what do you intend to go into as far as like dance goes or your art goes? It's usually my biggest closing question. But it's definitely a different perspective with where we are in this time frame.
yeah. So the next step that I can imagine myself taking as far as my own artistry and dance particularly kind of revolves around, it's hard for me to frame with words, it just revolves around like just enjoying the basics, the basic fundamental movements of this dance and finding ways to fall in love with it again from that lens. I understand that like relationships between people, your relationship with your own art takes work, it takes examination, it takes reflection, and coming back to your core why you dance is the thing that gives you your North Star as far as like, yeah, your next step and next direction, next endeavor. And for me, I guess what I'm really interested in is starting all over again And a lot of the B-boys and B-girls that I admire and have been inspired by during the pandemic are not the most well-known or like outrageously competitive heads. They're people that seem like they're just completely enjoying and loving the art that they create on a very kind of small and humble basis. And I guess, yeah, like my next step as a B-boy is to get towards that. I think Po One, for example, is one of those guys out there. He's probably most well known, but to me, like Bounce, and the handful of times that I've worked with him and built with him, it's like a big motivator in this light and in this journey. So, you know, I'm looking forward to relearning how to do everything I know how to do the other way and enjoying that process all over again and seeing where that places me. I've watched a lot of Bones Brigade documentary and listened a lot to Rodney Mullen's story about his journey with injury and needing to relearn his passion and discipline both ways and in new contexts and environments. And I would like to and feel excited to go on that journey with breaking. So the answer, I guess, for myself has nothing to do with followership on social media or acclaim or competitive success, but really, I think the next step for my own mental health and love for this dance is actually to pedal backwards as hard as possible and find as much as I can there and share that with my crew and my circles and the students who I maintain and continue to build with, and allow myself to also focus on my life's bigger picture, because it is intertwined with my journey as a dance, because I feel like I'm also doing that in terms of discovering a new career in Hawaii and a new calling as far as work and service that I can provide to others.
That's what's up, man.
It's all the same.
That's crazy, because I don't know if you saw the video of like the get down I had with some of the AOV guys.
Mm-hmm. I did.
That had been like the first time I actually like danced in like, I want to say like 3 years. But it like reignited that want to like dance again, not to do anything with it, but just to dance. And it's just crazy that you're saying that you're gonna backpedal, because I had like similar thoughts where I'm like, I've never learned how to freeze or stab on my right. We try to practice that. But you know, like the fear of trying to be or going back to being a beginner is like, it lingers, but I'm trying to overcome that. And like, it's dope to hear you say that you're gonna backpedal and try to do what you know now the other way. And so it's like,
I think the pandemic, like uniquely for breakers and b-boys in the USA, because I know there's jams happening in other places like Mexico and stuff, but you know, in places that are more locked down, the pandemic presents the opportunity to not feel baked under the pressure of competition and this show and tell-ness of hip-hop in general, which is valuable and important. But as an opportunity, it allows us to kind of like recenter ourselves and re-examine just the things that are fun, just the things that are healthy challenges for ourselves, not for the sake and not under the pressure of like, you know, like I don't feel like working on this because I'm gonna flop this at the next jam or in the next cypher and I'm gonna look like an idiot. But like, I wonder, I'm curious. I wonder if I can do this on my other side, and it may never see the light of day, but like, let's try it. And I think that itself like speaks to what passion is and freedom, what freedom is. And maybe to some degree like what true confidence is, you know, having confidence in your own ability to fail and be okay with it, and to struggle and to grapple with things and be bloodied but still smile and be like, that was tight. You know?
So thank you for sharing your time with us. Man, And this has definitely been a really dope catch up because like
Yeah, man.
hadn't really
Thanks
seen
for
you
having me.
since Wacko's jamming. Even when I saw you there, you were busy,
Yeah.
you know, judging.
Yeah. I
Um,
also brought some kids to that too.
you bring kids everywhere you go, man. I
Tour
have like
guide.
the utmost respect for you because like the journey from where we are here in Mill Valley to any jam is a distance. And I
Yeah.
mean, when I would see you with them in San Jose, I'm like, oh my God, he's got to drive back and take every one of them home.
Yeah, that's always been an uphill battle of communication with wording that in an organized sense
Yeah.
to family members. We might come back home by bedtime, 10 or 11, or we might be back at 2 in the morning. But your kids will probably have In and Out in them while they're sleeping. Okay, I'll let you know between 9 and 12.
Yeah, because jams never run like on schedule, especially towards the end.
I've been so blessed, for this opportunity, and yourself interviewing me and the ability to wield the trust of a community and group of kids and families to provide this beautiful mosaic of experiences that I think are essential in developing character, positive character in human beings. And I would not have had it any other way. I don't regret it. I think that, on the note of bringing people around, no matter what, I figure every opportunity for myself deserves to be an opportunity for someone else.
And I hope you continue to share that, man, because you're a true leader, and whatever your future holds in Hawaii, I hope that you're able to develop something similar that you have developed here in the Bay with these kids, and hopefully these kids continue to, I mean, not in a pressure sense, but continue to pass on things that you've taught them.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing,
So
man.
too, man. Thank you, Noi.
Catch us at the next one.
Aloha. Peace.